Through fire and rage, he fought the demon, a twisted version of his own form, that which stole the life of which he held most dear. Knowing the Reaper called for it, yet without fear tearing into its foe, relentlessly striking with claws and fire, even as his own body began to fail. Enduring the blade that cleaved through him, the nuclear inferno that burnt like a star within its chest. No longer a monster, but a father. For if death would claim him, Godzilla would not go alone. This is the story of the death of Godzilla, and the true horror of all he endured. Despite its place as one of the most beloved Godzilla films, it is one of the most profoundly tragic and darkest of all Godzilla movies, as throughout the entire duration of its run, Godzilla is actively dying. It isn't a simple thing as his death is triggered right at the end. His death is set up and placed into motion from the very start. There's no escaping it. It is the only conclusion the film builds to. In fact, at the very end, he is holding on just to kill Destoroyah before allowing himself to perish. And it was a drawn-out march to death that he knew was coming. Hello everyone, I'm Max Allo, your American Allosaurus, and we're actually going to be talking about something that I've kind of been wanting to for a while, had kind of a lot of plans to talk about this, and honestly, because this is probably one of the most, I guess in a very weird way, like depressing videos I've ever thought of, because Godzilla vs. Destoroyah is one of the hardest Godzilla movies for me to actually watch all the way through, particularly Godzilla's death, but it's a scene that I think I kind of want to talk about the most, because there really is a lot to talk about with Destoroyah. And it really does show just how far Godzilla as a character has come, particularly in the Heisei era. And as grim as it is, it's also rather heartwarming. So if you enjoy more kaiju content like this, don't forget to subscribe for more and, comment your thoughts. And perhaps, maybe you want to see us do something like that for the other deaths of Godzilla. Because canonically, this is one of the few Godzillas to actually have died. This Godzilla's death in particular is rather unique, as it's not the byproduct of some superweapon or a fatal strike from another monster. Rather, it's a death which eats away at him from the inside like a cancer. It's destabilizing him and actively causing him to break down. We can even see that he is holding on to actively try to suppress the amount of power that is surging out to hold on, as heightened moments of emotional stress cause it to flare up. Most clearly shown by after he is mourning the death of Junior, immediately it triggers a massive outburst of power. And tragically, this actually continues to show really just how far this version of Godzilla evolved from the more animalistic hunger of his original portrayal in The Return of Godzilla, where his desire to find nuclear material was originally portrayed to be more of an animalistic hunger rather than an intelligent creature. The beginning of where he started to change and show a much more emotional side was actually in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, where we see what Godzilla was like before he became Godzilla, when he was simply the Godzillasaurus. He actively shows hesitation to destroy Shindo and the building he is in. This was the man that was on Lagos Island back during World War II that Godzilla unintentionally saved. Him and the remaining Japanese soldiers that were stationed there, that were unintentionally saved by him, actually mourned over him and thanked him for saving them, even though they knew that this dinosaur was not really acting to intentionally save them. They praised it and honored its sacrifice as it was killed, or believed to have been killed, by the American shore bombardment. Godzilla, evidently remembering him many years in the future, did not want to destroy. However, because of the twisted new form he had become, he saw himself as just a monster. And, as a monster, what is there to do but to destroy? With the sequel to this, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, this shows him come to the realization that he is not just a monster. He somewhat mellowed out after discovering the egg of the other Godzilla soar. The only reason he seeks out and attacks humanity at this point is because they take the egg, and it is an egg of something of his species. He pursues them to protect it and to look after it. In fact, after realizing that he is scaring Junior, he actually leaves. In Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, he actively shields Junior from Space Godzilla's attacks, putting himself in harm's way specifically to save Junior. And has since then not really left Baz Island. Again, looking after Junior the entire time, and his relationship with humanity, while still not great, is much less hostile. This new side of him comes full force with Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, as now he is not a monster, he is a father. And as throughout the entire film, he is beginning to undergo the late stages of his meltdown. And after Destoroyah not only kills Junior, but is laughing over his gruesome act, Godzilla is holding on for one simple reason: to avenge his son. While he is holding on, the nuclear meltdown is still flaring up, but he is suppressing as much as he can of it. And the only reason why he melts down directly after Destoroyah's death is because he now no longer needs to. He succeeded in avenging his son by actually destroying the very creature that is his dark reflection. I've brought this up in past videos, but Destoroyah is all the darkest aspects of what went into Godzilla as a character. They are both creatures that are spawned from the same source. Humanity's superweapons unintentionally creating a monster beyond what we could have ever comprehended. The difference is that whereas Godzilla was originally a very sympathetic character, compassionate, he came from a species of creatures that were social, and most were wiped out by, of course, the atomic bombs, where Destoroyah was never really given this. It was simply an omnicidal creature after its mutation. It wishes only to destroy, where Godzilla actually does seek out companionship. The active malice and glee Destoroyah shows is something that Godzilla simply doesn't. This final battle is, again, not just Godzilla facing down that which killed his son, but facing down his own personal demons. The most monstrous, twisted form, because in this form, the final form of Destoroyah is actually utilizing Junior's DNA to construct a form somewhat similar to Godzilla, only demonic, fused with the crab-like form that it originally had. So he is quite literally facing his own dark side, a most monstrous version of what he could have become. How he was able to redirect and suppress his own meltdown is actually somewhat shown in the final battle. We first start to see his dorsal spines beginning to melt down midway through the fight. We see him actually weaponizing parts of his own meltdown midway through the battle. We see these pulses of energy coming out around him as he utilizes more powerful versions of his heat ray, the infinite heat ray. These cause incredibly significant damage to Destoroyah, blowing off parts of his face, and the sheer heat his body is actually giving off causes Destoroyah's body to also begin to break down. So both Godzilla and Destoroyah, their bodies are quite literally falling apart internally the longer this fight goes on. The second thing that shows this is actually Godzilla's dorsal spines melting down. His dorsal spines are how he redirects and focuses his atomic energy, namely when he utilizes his atomic ray, most of all. The fact that these are what melt down first shows that he is channeling energy into them constantly. And also, after this, they erupt in these massive flame-like radiation trails and massive pulses around him. Unlike the previous pulses that were emanating from his torso, the sheer heat given off by this is ultimately what kills Destoroyah, as it isn't just simply the Japanese military firing the freeze rays at Destoroyah as he is trying to escape, but rather the thermal shock of Destoroyah's wings and part of his body being frozen by the ultra-low temperature weapon systems, in conjunction with Godzilla positioning himself directly below where Destoroyah was, allowing the heat from his meltdown to superheat the area, and particularly the ground. On contact with the ground, the intense thermal shock caused Destoroyah's body to violently break down on a molecular level. Godzilla was actually supposed to more directly weaponize his meltdown against Destoroyah by holding on to Destoroyah and the meltdown claiming both of their lives at the same time, but this was instead changed to give more focus to Godzilla's death, which ultimately I think was the best choice. This is why after he destroys Destoroyah, Godzilla's meltdown begins to take full effect, and he dies not as a monster, but as a protector and an avenger, a father. But even as his body is burning and disintegrating, he is still holding on. This shows just how powerful he is. Even his own body breaking down at this aggressive of a stage of meltdown does not actually allow him to die in full. He is still roaring up until the very end. Normally, this would be the most horrific part of his death, but the true horror of this fight wasn't Godzilla knowing he was going to die. It wasn't fighting the literal demon that was Destoroyah, who killed his own son. It wasn't even his own body quite literally melting down. It was that Godzilla never knew his death would actually save Junior. After Godzilla's meltdown is complete and radiation floods Tokyo, the radiation levels decrease, because all of it was absorbed by Junior, resurrecting him and allowing him to fully mature into a new Godzilla. In the end, Godzilla never failed. But he would never know this.